Good morning and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. You know, the hits just keep coming because this month, New York City lawmakers have introduced one of the most ambitious wage proposals in American history, raising the city's minimum wage to $30 per hour. If they manage to get this thing passed, the measure would nearly double the city's current $17 per hour minimum wage and create the highest wage floor anywhere in the country. Now, supporters argue that such a dramatic increase is necessary in one of the world's most expensive cities, forgetting why it's more expensive. But anyway, critics warn that it could destabilize small business, accelerate automation, and reshape the city's economy in unpredictable ways. The city is about to become an automat. Listen to what I'm saying. The proposal has ignited a nationwide debate about the role of government in setting wages, the limits of the labor market intervention, and the long-term consequences of radical economic policies. So if New York City ultimately adopts a $30 minimum wage, the effects will extend far beyond the five boroughs. So this is not just a local policy question. It is a potential economic experiment that could influence wage policies across the United States. Okay, the proposed legislation would gradually increase New York City's minimum wage over several years until it reaches $30 an hour. Under the plan as it is now, large employees, that's people with companies with more than 500 workers, would reach $30 by 2030, which is in 4 years. Okay, smaller businesses would have until 2032 to reach the same wage level or to have closed their business and moved to Florida. The increases would occur in stages: $20 by next year, 2027, 23 by 28, 26 by 29, and 30 by 2030. Small businesses would follow a slower schedule, reaching $30 2 years later. Okay. It makes me laugh because we know by then all the small business people will have sold their business and will be living in Clearwater. Smaller supporters estimate that more than 1 million workers could benefit from the wage increase. The bill also includes additional provisions such as gradually eliminating the tip credit for restaurant workers and increasing enforcement requirements for employers. More government. If enacted, the measure would establish a wage floor more than 4 times higher than the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour, which nobody pays. Nobody pays. Everybody pays more than $7.25 an hour. Everybody, everywhere. Nobody is earning the minimum wage. Nobody. Which has remained unchanged since 2009 because nobody's paying it. Anyway, the supporters, the true believers of the policy, argue that New York's extreme cost of living, I wonder why that is, but we'll talk about that later, makes such a high minimum wage unavoidable. Housing costs in the city have dramatically risen over the past 2 decades. Rent, transportation, childcare, and groceries, which are supposed to be free under this dude. But anyway, and groceries have all increased faster than wages for low-income workers. Proponents say the current $17 minimum wage, which is $9.75 over the federal minimum wage, by the way, simply does not allow workers to survive in the city. Some advocates argue that even $30 might not fully cover the basic living expenses. According to the city council supporters, a worker may need to make closer to $38 an hour to meet basic minimum needs in New York. Are you taking this in? In that context, the $30 proposal is framed not as a radical policy, but as an attempt to close the gap between wages and living costs. Supporters also believe that the increase would would reduce poverty and decrease reliance on government assistance programs such as food stamps and housing subsidies. They argue that when wages rise, workers have more spending power. Well, according to this, spending power isn't the deal. I thought it was about, but anyway, never mind, never mind. That that additional spending circulates through the economy, boosting local businesses and generating economic growth. These people think that the money comes from the sky. In this view, raising wages is simply not a social policy, it's an economic stimulus. Except the people who are paying are the same people who have to. Anyway, going on. Minimum wage laws in the United States have been controversial forever. You know that. The first federal minimum wage was created in 1938 under the Fair Labor Standards Act during the presidency, of course, everybody's favorite FDR. The goal was to protect workers from exploitation and stabilize the labor market during the Great Depression. So for decades, minimum wage increases were relatively modest. However, the modern push for large wage increases accelerated during the Fight for 15. I remember that, right? Which began in 2012 when fast food workers demanded higher wages and better working conditions. You work at freaking McDonald's. It is what it is. Yeah, I remember seeing that video of this woman who said she'd been working at Wendy's for 10 years. The problem is you've been working at Wendy's for 10 years. And Wendy's was never designed for you to feed a family of 4. It's not what it was designed for. So it doesn't. And in 10 years, a decade, you couldn't find something else. You couldn't better yourself in 10 years. Anyway, so at the time, the idea was $15 minimum wage was considered radical. Yet over the past decade, many states and cities adopted that standard. Today, magically, several major cities have a minimum wage above $18 an hour. But a $30 minimum wage would represent an entirely different scale of wage policy, one that economists and policymakers have never tested in the United States. Okay. Now, supporters emphasize fairness and affordability like they always do. Sane people focus on economic consequences. One of the primary concerns is, of course, job loss. If I remember, Lord, please let me remember, I'm going to put a link up there somewhere, of the video that I did years ago. And it's my most popular video about job loss and automation in the fast food industry that I think has had a lot to do with the Fight for 15. Go ahead and click on that when you get done watching this. All right. Excuse me. So when the cost of labor rises dramatically, businesses often respond by first reducing the number of workers they employ. If I got to pay everybody $30 an hour, I can't have as many people as I have now, or I'll go out of business, and then nobody will have a job. And that will occur through layoffs, reduced hiring, and or having everybody work fewer hours. So you used to get 25 hours a week, and now you're going to get 10. And there'll be fewer people. This is Econ 101. This is Econ 101. Small business 101. The sudden increase from $17 to $30 an hour represents roughly a 76% increase in the wage floor. Restaurant owners in particular have warned that the policy could devastate their industry. Many restaurants operate on a profit margins of just a few percent. A large increase in labor costs could force them to raise prices significantly, which goes against the people who are working for them having more buying power because the price of what they need to buy goes up. They cut staff or just bail out entirely. Some business owners already say they would cancel expansion plans if the policy becomes law. That means fewer people get hired. That means fewer people build buildings. That means fewer people. Critics argue that the policy may unintentionally destroy the very jobs it purports to improve. Now, I have to wonder if the word unintentionally is true. I don't know if they're so unintentional. Large corporations may be able to absorb large wage increases because large corporations that employ 10,000 people can. Small businesses cannot. If you have a dry cleaners and you may have 6 people working for you, including yourself, you cannot absorb a 76% increase in wages. Cannot. You go out of business. Or it's just you working in the store all week long by yourself. That's how that works out. Independent restaurants, local retail stores, neighborhood service providers, and family owned businesses typically have fewer financial reserves than major corporations. So in New York City, a small business already faces high rent, insurance costs, and regulatory expenses, which are going to go up because compliance cost money to do. Adding a dramatic wage increase on top of those costs could push many businesses past their financial breaking point. There is not an unlimited source of money for these people. Some business groups argue that the policy could unintentionally favor large corporation change. And let me help you, that's not unintentional. We saw that during COVID, where the small stores couldn't be open, but Walmart and Costco sure could. Right? Big companies have economies of scale that access to capital that small businesses don't. If independent businesses fail, large chains will expand to fill the gaps. The result will be less economic diversity, which is the plan, and fewer locally owned business, which is also the plan. What else will happen is increased automation. If you watch that video, you'll see, excuse me, popcorn, and you'll see what McDonald's has already been doing, and they'll continue to do it. Businesses have already began replacing low-skilled labor with technology in response to rising wages. Examples include self-checkout machines at grocery stores, which we all just hate. Digital ordering kiosks at restaurants at McDonald's. And I guess I had to go into a Popeyes chicken restaurant, and I walked in and I was heading towards the counter when I noticed there was a whole row of ordering kiosks. And this busy restaurant, there was like 3 people working. Now, why the person at the counter when I walked out, why they couldn't take my order, I have no idea. But they pointed me toward the kiosks. Robotic food preparation systems. These things are put together by assembly line anyway, so who needs a human being? Robots can do it. Automated inventory management systems. So we don't need bag boys or stock boys or stock women or stock people running up and down the aisles at the Wally World. We don't need that. That can be done. That can be done and will be done by robots. So when the wages rise, automation becomes more economically attractive. It'll cost more in the beginning, but it'll cost less as time moves on. So if a worker costs $30 per hour, the machine that performs the same task may quickly become the cheaper option. These policies price humans out of the labor market. Some analysts warn that rapid wage increases will accelerate the adoption of labor replacing technology. Amazingly, the workers most affected will be those with the fewest skills and the fewest alternative job opportunities. So instead of receiving higher wages, they'll be receiving pink slips. Now, what else will probably happen as a result of a $30 minimum wage is, of course, higher prices. Businesses cannot reduce staff or automate tasks often pass increased labor costs to consumers. This means higher prices for goods and services. Restaurants will raise menu prices. Retail stores will increase product prices. Service providers will charge more for haircuts, repairs, and cleaning services. And in most cases, price increases could offset much of the wage gain that these workers receive. So effectively, their buying power doesn't increase, it lessens. If the cost of living rises alongside wages, the real purchasing power of workers will not improve significantly. It may decrease. And in other words, higher wages could lead to higher prices rather than higher living standards. And that's what always happens. Economic policies also influence where businesses and workers choose to locate. If operating a business becomes significantly more expensive in New York City, companies will relocate. Now, this is not a theoretical concern. In recent years, many companies have moved operations from high-cost cities to lower-cost states, such as Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. If a $30 minimum wage policy significantly increases operating costs, then employers will decide to expand elsewhere rather than New York City. And pretty soon, it'll affect the job creation in the city. While the policy may raise wages for workers who remain employed, it will reduce the number of jobs available in the long run. Popcorn, sorry. The $30 minimum wage proposal is also a part of a broader political movement. Progressive leaders argue that government must intervene more aggressively to address economic inequities or inequalities. In their view, market forces alone have produced wages that are too low for workers to survive in expensive urban areas. Critics see the policy as a form of economic experimentation that will lead and produce unintended consequences, because they always do. They argue that wages should primarily be determined by supply and demand in the labor market. This debate reflects a larger ideological conflict about the role of government in economic life. The outcome of New York's proposal will influence that debate for years to come. Now, this isn't a foregone conclusion because there is a legal hurdle. Even if the New York City Council passes the legislation, the policy will face legal challenges because the minimum wage laws in New York are typically set at the state level. For the city to establish its own wage floor, state approval will be required. This means the proposal could face resistance not only from business groups, but also from lawmakers in Albany. Oh, by the way, Albany is the state capital of New York, not New York. Now you know. Okay, the political process may ultimately determine whether the policy ever takes effect. If New York City is successful in implementing this moronic $30 minimum wage, the consequences will extend far beyond the city. Other progressive cities will give it a shot. Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago. If the policy appears to succeed, which it will not, but that's not important, they may accelerate the path for higher wages across the country. If it produces significant job losses and economic disruption, they'll do it anyway. At the core, The New York City proposal represents a real world test of competing economic theories. Supporters believe higher wages will strengthen the economy by boosting workers' purchasing power and reducing poverty. People who aren't crazy believe artificially high wage floors distort the labor market and create unintended economic consequences. Both sides claim economic evidence supports their position, except one side is wrong. But the truth is that no American city has ever attempted a minimum wage anywhere near $30 an hour. The scale of the proposal means the outcome cannot be predicted with certainty, except that it won't work. New York City will effectively become a laboratory for new economic policy. Okay, now here's what might happen. Let's go ahead and bat it around. If the $30 minimum wage becomes law, several possible outcomes could occur. Some workers would undoubtedly benefit from higher wages if you manage to keep your job. If your business managed not to close, yeah, in a few years, you'll be making more money. And if you are one of those low income people who are making, between 17 and $20 an hour now, yeah, your take home pay may increase. Well, it'll increase if, the Trump tax cuts, stay in. I'm just saying. However, the broader effects will include higher prices for goods and services. So you'll take home more money, but you'll spend more money. Reducing hiring in low skill industries. That means you'll make more money, but you'll be there by yourself. You'll work a lot harder. Faster adoption of automation. You will always be afraid of the robots. Increased pressure on small businesses. If you work for a small business or a family-owned business, you're always going to worry if you're going to wake up one morning and go to work and there'll be a closed sign on the door. And if you can move, be ready to move. If you can move, always be ready to move because because the possible relocation of some employers is very, very high. The overall economic impact would likely depend on how businesses and consumers respond. Some industries might adapt successfully. They might, but they probably won't. I'm just telling you. I'm trying to be fair here, but I can't tell you a lie. Most will struggle to survive. The $30 minimum wage proposal is more than a local political issue. It is a decision that could reshape the economic landscape of America's largest city. Morons see it as a moral and economic necessity in a city where living costs continue to rise. Sane people see it as a risky experiment that will destabilize businesses and eliminate jobs. Higher wages, of course, can improve living standards for workers. They could. But dramatic changes in the labor costs can also disrupt labor markets. Ultimately, New York City must decide whether the potential benefits outweigh the potential risk. And the potential benefits are all political. None of them are economic. If the policy becomes law, we'll all be watching. Because what happens in New York, sadly and frightfully, may determine the future of wage policy across this great country. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody. And for goodness sake, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.